Hey.
Hello and welcome to Live at Epiphan. Thank you for joining us today. We have a pretty interesting show. We're going to be talking about bringing in guests and creating content and live streams using Microsoft Teams, which is a question we get here at Epiphan all the time. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. And we're going to have, I'm going to have one of my colleagues who's far more knowledgeable about video production than I am join us on this so that he can lend his expertise on how we figure all this out. So, Adam, are you there?
Yes, I am here, George. Are you hearing me?
Yeah, I am. This is great. We're in different
Awesome.
places. And so
That's
we
right.
are actually using Teams to produce this as well, and more on that later. But we're going to share a bunch of different ways of doing this, right? And so, Adam, what are some of the ways you've seen to need this, right? There's hybrid stuff, there's virtual events still, all across every industry. Like we talk to customers every day from corporate business world, healthcare and education and so on, who are all trying to do this in one form or another. And there's a lot of ways of doing it, right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, being on the support team here at Epiphan and helping produce the live shows, I've seen kind of both ends of this, right? I've been in the producer seat and I'm listening to customers tell me every day about their pain points dealing with hybrid events and things like that. So this is a topic that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and one that I've personally had a lot of experience with.
Yeah, and of course we're focusing on Microsoft Teams for a good reason. Like there's lots of ways of doing online creation, right? Like people use vMix with vMix Call all the time. People use platforms like StreamYard and BeLive. Like there's a ton of them out there. But those are, you got to teach people how to use those. It's not always that easy for the guests. So what we want to kind of focus on is there are ways to do it with tools that people are using every day, like Microsoft Teams. So we know what the stats are, right? Microsoft tells us there's something like 280 million people using Microsoft Teams every day.
Wow.
So 280 million people that are already familiar with the tool. So why don't we use that? And there's a few ways to do it. We're going to try to cover each one of these in 5 minutes or less to kind of go through it fairly quickly. But, again, there's pros and cons to these. And I think that's what we want to pick apart. And Adam, I really want to hear from you from that producer's seat. That's what because you've tried all of these. You've had successes and failures with each one of these. Yeah. So I want to hear a little bit about that as we go through it. But yeah, three ways. First one is actually, we'll cover this first. This isn't even actually one of the ways. This is option 0. This is what's actually completely 100% built into Teams, and that's using Microsoft Teams live events. Now, Adam, you've heard me rant about this 1,000 times, so I'm going to do it very, very quickly again.
Yeah, I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, but you've encountered this with customers. Microsoft has used the Teams as a brand. It means not just the conferencing tool that we use for meetings every day, but it also encompasses other tools for essentially live streaming and production. And that's what Teams Live Events is about. So it falls under this Teams umbrella, but it really means something else. I wish they would have stuck with calling it Microsoft Stream or something like that, which is another name for it. They didn't. So it makes it confusing. People get lost in it. But it does have some advantages. And there's basically 2 ways to use Microsoft Teams live events. You can drive it from a Teams meeting, from a conference call, essentially, into Teams live events, which, again, that's all built in. So it's really, really easy, pretty straightforward. But it has its limitations that you're still using what the meeting kind of brings forward. And there's some effort there. We have a little video example that we're going to show you here in a second on how you actually have to run that as the producer. And to me, it's still limited, right? It's easy. The other option is you can also publish to a Teams live event using a third-party encoder like an Epiphan Pearl, but you can't use both the meeting source and an encoder source at the same time. When you create the Teams live event, you have to choose one or the other. You can't blend them together. And that's my first gripe with this method, is that that's limiting from my perspective, from a content creation perspective. So, and I think you probably agree with me from a producer's perspective on that, Adam.
Yeah, as a producer, I'm a control freak. So anytime that options are kind of taken away from me, I start to get nervous. So yeah, I like to have the most options and the most control possible if I can.
Exactly. So we found this video, gentleman, kind of demonstrating this very, very quickly, right? It shows this great UI. You can do some split screen stuff. The content choices you have are participants in the meeting and content they might be screen sharing. But that's it. If you want to do titles, you want to do fancy graphics or cool bumpers and pre-rolls and all those things you literally just saw us do, or get fancier with the layouts of mixing people together, you can't do that when it's driven from a meeting source like this. So while the meeting source part is really simple, it's really easy, I think it's great in a lot of respects if you're looking for just really basic, low-hanging kind of, I might use this internally, to be honest.
Yeah, this could be a good way to get your feet wet maybe in live events if you don't want to, maybe you're overwhelmed a little bit by the options out there.
Exactly. I don't know that I would want to produce something publicly this way, though. It just wouldn't have enough pizzazz.
Yeah, exactly.
But it does have some easy tools. Again, you can queue things. So it is going to be familiar to people who understand how to do video, and that's pretty cool. And there's a bunch of different things in here that you can kind of go through and look at how it works. So that's an option, right?
Yeah.
Not my favorite. It's not my favorite at all. But that's why we call this option 0, because you're really just using a meeting. So
well,
the
to play
other
devil's
way
advocate. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, George.
Yeah, no.
To play devil's advocate, simplicity has its merits, right? And so if it's simple and reliable and just works, that could be a compelling option, maybe.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. So the other one that could be possible, and I know, Adam, you probably have the biggest gripes about this, is the isolated speaker screen capture, aka what we refer to as a pin farm. And I would love to hear from people in the audience. What do you call it? What do you call the capturing multiple screens and bringing them, into a larger switcher? And we have some examples of this, bringing them ultimately into your production, right? So what does that look like? So we call it a pin farm, because essentially you need individual computers that are all participants of the meeting, and then each one of those pins another participant of the meeting so that you can essentially get an ISO feed out, but it requires individual computers to do ISO feeds. This is complicated. It works. It's effective. I know a lot of producers that really like this. But Adam, you hate it.
Yeah, I mean, just the idea of that many points of failure. I mean, one computer per each participant, if you want kind of the best, quality going full screen on that computer. I mean, we went from two extremes, right? We had the really simple option as the first one, and now it's the most complicated. And I think you're sharing some pictures here, George, of kind of the production nightmare that I think would be keeping me up at night if I had to kind of repeat this again. We were kind of doing this at the beginning of the pandemic before we kind of had all these newer tools that we're using now. And
the tools got better.
Yeah, a lot better.
Yeah. So, I mean, the pros here is logically it's easy to understand from a straightforward perspective. I mean, it isn't with this many pieces of gear necessarily straightforward, but logically it's straightforward. It's a what you see is what you get type of scenario. So I think a lot of producers are comfortable with that because of that type of scenario. You don't need to enable special permissions and software levels, but you can see in some of these pictures, there's extra manpower. In this picture I'm sharing right now, by my math, in order to run this pin farm effectively, to have all the participants brought into the program, there's about, if we say each laptop is an average of $1,000, which is pretty common, there's about $15,000 worth of laptops there to make this work. That is my problem with it. There's points of failure and tremendous cost to do this. And so that, I think that's some of the cons, right? Cumbersome, as you mentioned, Adam. There's, separate computers. There's all kinds of points of failure.
It sounds like you need a guy to just wrangle laptops, basically,
Yeah, and I think that's what this guy's doing, sitting in
and
this picture here. I think that's his job. He's laptop wrangler. Like, that's, the other one, we've heard this from our friend Jeremy, who's producing this show right now in the background, that in a lot of these pin farm setups, and he's had a ton of experience with these, the first rule is no one's allowed to share a screen inside the conferencing tool, because as soon as they do, it messes up everything they're trying to do from the pin farm. So someone else, another laptop, has to share the content into the switcher, which means the person presenting doesn't necessarily have self-control over those slides. That's actually, as someone who does a lot of webinars and stuff like that, that's maybe one of my biggest complaints about this. I get it from the producer side, but I want to be able to control my own slides, because I jump around, I go back and forth, because I like to have conversations. So I guess the other one, Adam, would be isolated audio. There's no ISO audio with this. What do you think about that?
Right. I forgot about that, and that sounds like a nightmare. I mean, how are they even, so I guess they're just, what, are they going around muting each laptop, or like, what the heck are they even doing there?
Laptop wrangler, I don't know what a laptop wrangler makes these days, but hopefully it's a decent hourly wage.
Yeah, I mean, I see laptops, and I'm scared, and I have PTSD, and yeah, that to me, this option, I mean, I can understand what you're saying about, okay, it's logical, and but yeah, that seems like a nightmare to me.
Yeah, and I mean, you can see what's involved. So the next one is actually kind of similar in concept to this, except without all of the many, many, many laptops. And that would be trying to do this over NDI from Microsoft Teams. Now, this is something that Microsoft implemented into Teams before Zoom did, and arguably still works better than the way Zoom implemented it. So congrats to Microsoft on that. So what you can do there is enable NDI, which we'll talk about what that requires in a second. You can see a button for broadcast over NDI within the UI. That sends it across your network, of course, into your encoder that can use NDI. So that could be our Pearl 2 or any of the other encoders out there like TriCasters and so on that use NDI. So I know you've tried this, Adam. So what was your experience, or what were your pros and cons to this?
Yeah, we used this to kind of run a symposium where we had kind of different guests from all over the place. So it was just the easiest thing to kind of get them all into one Teams meeting. I liked it. It was pretty good. I mean, it's way better than the pin farm, in my opinion. Everything is kind of on one screen. There are still some issues, like you need a pretty decent computer to pump out all those NDI streams. You need a pretty good, production PC, as we called it. The other issue is, each of those streams are coming in over NDI. With Teams, unfortunately, the resolution on those streams might be changing. And if you're kind of creating a layout with a specific resolution of a source in mind, and then the source changes resolution, that could be a problem. And we had to do some kind of tricks to buffer that and to kind of deal with that.
Right. So pros are, it has a clean output, but I guess before we do that, this is really part of the cons section to me. You have to enable it in Teams administration, which means a user can't do this, right? We're talking about deep level Microsoft account administrators first having to go in and enable NDI to even be possible within the enterprise ecosystem. Once that's done, then you can actually see it in the UI and use it as a user, right? So you got to get IT involved. So it's not always that easy. And if you don't do it in advance, well, too bad.
Yeah.
So this can be a con, but it's really not that big of a deal because you only do it once and then you're set. Another thing, so pros, clean video out. So that's good, right? Gives us what the pin farm's trying to achieve, but arguably better. It's low latency because NDI is, although it's a stream, is a low latency stream because it is full NDI, not NDI-HX.
Yeah.
And it can be high quality, but you mentioned the scaling already. That can obviously impact the quality. So those are the cons, right?
Yes.
Unpredictable scaling. And I believe it scales based on the number of NDI streams you pull out, right? So I think my experience with it, if you want like full HD or even 720, you're kind of limited to only like 2 or 3 participants you can pull out, right?
Yeah, well, and actually in our testing, it scaled based on a number of factors, and that was kind of the tricky thing about it was that it also mattered, okay, how big was it on the production PC? Like how big was that participant? So what we found we had to do was kind of set it up pretty rigidly where, okay, every participant that we wanted an NDI stream for, we would pin them, like spotlight them, make them full screen. And so, yeah, it was still a little bit, it was okay, but there was definitely some kind of ins and outs, gotchas, little kind of things we had to kind of work out first.
And part of that is the way NDI works. Again, this is using full NDI, right? So
Yeah.
full NDI at 1080p is like 120 megabit per stream, right? So like even on a local network with gigabit, that's a ton of bandwidth. So, and that's why they implement the auto scaling for this, which again, totally logical. It makes sense. You want to bring out like 6, 7, 8 people, that's going to blow your bandwidth way out of the water. So they automatically scale it down as the number goes up. And that makes perfect sense. But again, if you're looking for that super crisp full HD or even 720, but you need a big number of participants, might be challenging there.
Well, and to put my producer hat on for a second, any unknown variable that might just change in a moment, I mean, that's again a nightmare, right? It's like constant anxiety of like, is my stream going to be okay for the next few minutes? And luckily once we got everything kind of set and static, it was solid for the whole time. But yeah, it just one more thing to kind of add to my list of anxieties as a producer.
So the third option, and here's where, a little bit of self-promotion here, but in all honesty, is the best of these options. And the reason for that is that it's expanding on kind of what the idea of what NDI is trying to accomplish, but better in a number of ways. And that would be to use Epiphan Connect. So Connect has a similar idea, right? We have a Teams meeting. The participants just join it. They don't have to know anything. They don't have to do anything. Connect extracts SRT streams from the Teams meeting and can bring them into any production workflow that can ingest SRT, which could be a hardware encoder or software encoder or whatever. The big advantage here, and Adam, I'll let you talk about this because it segues exactly from what you talked about consistency-wise. Connect allows you to stabilize that so that even if someone participating in Teams, their bandwidth dips and Teams automatically compresses or scales or whatever, what we get out of Connect over SRT is stabilized, right?
Oh, I love that. I mean, that just, when the devs were working on this, I said, please, I can't wait for this to actually be available because I'm going to start using it right away. And that was one of the big things was that I'm not going to have to worry about, is my source going to start changing resolution on me? It's stable, it's locked in, and yeah, it's awesome. Peace of mind, basically.
Right. I think the other advantage is, with doing this over SRT also means we're not locked into doing things locally, right? SRT is designed to traverse the internet. You can't realistically send full NDI across the internet. It's not designed for it. The bandwidth is nuts. But SRT, you can, and it's going to be compressed in H.264, so it's not going to be crazy on bandwidth. You can choose your bit rates to match up with whatever you might need on the receiving side, that kind of thing. But it also means that you could use cloud-based production tools, which I'll more on that in a moment, or, let's just say you're using a software tool like vMix. Your producer doesn't even have to be in the same place. They just need to be somewhere and receive those SRT streams. So this has a decentralized advantage. It has that signal stability advantage. And that's pretty good. And of course, you still get the clean out and you can choose isolated audio, which is again, the negative of a pin farm, no isolated audio.
Yeah.
You can also get an isolated screen share, which means you never have to worry about someone turning on and off a screen share, screwing up your pin farm, or messing with the gallery. So tell me, Adam, just a little bit, because you have been producing a bunch of content using Connect in the past little while. Tell me a little bit more about your experience and how easy it's been and how much it's improved over some of the ways we were doing things.
Well, the big thing, simplicity right off the bat. Everything is on one page, right? So when you log into that Epiphan cloud and you're seeing your Connect kind of page and it's connected to that Teams meeting, all your participants are there, your screen share is there, so it's all one page. So again, that's just beautiful for me as a producer. Less to focus on, less tabs open on my screen. Again, you talked about that screen share too. The fact that it'll automatically switch over between screen shares, and what I really love is that if someone, one person stops and another person starts, it'll put a nice little graphic in between there saying, waiting for screen share. So, before we had to kind of go, okay, when they say do the screen share, we're going to cut away and then we're going to cut back. And so again, it's just less, essentially it reduces the mental workload to a massive degree. And that's really important because essentially if I can't get that workload down to a certain point, it's going to be really hard for me to produce the show effectively.
Well, it increases your prep time and obviously all of those things. So pros, just to kind of reiterate what we just said, pros, stabilized video, right? Consistent resolution of your choice, consistent frame rate, consistent bit rate of your choice. That could be full HD, 60 frames per second, or whatever. Isolated audio for each participant, which can be huge. The dummy-proof screen sharing, right? That's great.
It really is dummy-proof.
And then the fact that it's decentralized, it could be done entirely remotely, can be a huge, huge advantage.
Oh, yeah.
The con, of course, is similar to NDI. You do need to do a one-time admin level sort of software install enablement within the enterprise level of the Teams account. So the enterprise admin, IT, is going to have to do this one time to allow the permissions for Connect to exist within your Teams ecosystem so that it can join the meeting, because essentially a bot joins the meeting, which creates the bridge to do these extractions. But again, it should be something you only ever need to do once, ideally, and shouldn't have to touch it again once it's there. So that's a pretty big part of it. So let's quickly run down a comparison here. The pin farm, the isolated speaker capture, right? Number of participants is, I guess, only limited by the number of laptops you want to buy. I mean, I don't know about you, Adam, but my bank account's not that big.
Well, and I mean, what about the production, or how do you ingest all that? So that, it's not just the laptops. You've got to also now get all those into
Switcher.
Some kind of, yeah. So I mean, that's a whole other cost, which could easily, make this very expensive.
Right. It's not really something you can do remote access wise. You're going to end up with bodies in a room all tied together with all these laptops, probably 1,000 degrees. A little more manpower there. And it does require a lot of additional hardware. Microsoft Teams NDI out. The number of participants, if you want full HD 1080p, is really limited to about 3. It starts to scale after that. So, if you're okay with the scaling, that's fine. But eventually, I think by the time you get to about 6 or 7, you're down to like 360p, and no one wants to do that. So, let's say it's 3 to 4 average, maybe as many as 5 before it struggles. It's not really remote access because you have to send NDI locally, right? Can't do it across the internet. And as you mentioned, you need a pretty good machine to help host that, to pump out all that NDI, because NDI is pretty demanding on CPU load. So, making sure that you have a pretty decent machine to do that, but it's valid.
Yeah.
And then with Epiphan Connect, what can we do there?
We can do a lot. Looks like we got up to 9 participants right now for Epiphan Connect, and that doesn't include the screen share. So the screen share is its own separate thing. And we also have the active speaker. I don't know if we touched on that as well, but that's and the NDI does that as well. But with Epiphan Connect, again, it's just kind of much smoother. And so, again, yeah, more options, more capability, and it doesn't matter how good your computer is for that. You can just log into a web page and you're off to the races.
Right. You can do it remotely because of SRT, right? And I'm going to show I'm going to do a little micro demo here afterwards, pull back the curtain, people can see what we're doing right now to understand what we mean by this. And of course, other than assuming you already have an SRT enabled production tool, you don't require additional hardware. And I think that's a huge advantage, right? It's all cloud-based, SaaS-based, that, assuming you already have an SRT workflow, which again could be software like OBS or vMix, or could be hardware like a Pearl or a TriCaster or Grass Valley or whatever. Exactly. Anything that uses SRT. So kind of more universal, I would say.
Yeah, 100%.
All right. So what does that actually look like? Because clearly Connect is the winner. There's no no question about that.
I know which one I'd use.
Yeah, I mean, it's seriously, setting all biases aside, right? I've experienced all three of these. We've done productions where I just use remote SRT contribution hardware encoders like a Pearl Nano, sending over SRT to a production hub, and I have to have back channel communications, and that's great for really high quality, but it's not for users who don't understand it. So when you want to achieve high quality, simplicity, all these things, you're kind of looking at these options, these three options, certainly. And for me, if you want to give to the producers like you, Adam, what you want quality-wise, Connect is the winner, clearly.
Yeah. And I mean, like I was saying, I was, basically pleading with the devs, like, release this as soon as you can, because I can't wait to start using it. I've tried all the other ways, and, they have their pluses and minuses, as we talked about, but you just can't beat that simplicity, peace of mind, worry-free, and yeah, it just works.
So we did write a blog about this. Our colleague put together an amazing blog about producing with MS Teams. It's all this info is also in that blog. So check that out on the website. We'll try to put a link into chat here in a moment, just so you can see that. It's a great blog, puts all this information together. And so you can share that with people. Of course, you can share this video after the fact too. But a little bit behind the scenes. Okay, so we talked about Connect. What do we do here? So I'm going to show in Epiphan Cloud exactly what's happening in this meeting where you and I, our producer Jeremy, our content producer Marta is all a part of right now, and what that looks like in Connect. So when I look at Epiphan Cloud, right, I can go into Epiphan Connect. There's this meeting for this show that's here. It lists all the participants that are in it. And you can see right now, I'm the only one being extracted from Connect over SRT. But you can start and stop those participants very easily here in the cloud. I could do this from anywhere. It's going to give me the SRT URL, the port. There's some simple settings on, when get things going. And again, you can see that although this is weird for me. Usually I'm sending way better signal through Teams. So I don't know if I'm still having internet problems like yesterday, but Connect is stabilizing it to 1080, 30 frames per second at 5 megabit so that our producer Jeremy is actually getting a decent feed, not 360p at 1 meg. Pathetic. So, that's part of the magic, is that you're getting that stabilization of the signal. You can see my screen share is also connected there, right? You can mute things, turn off people's camera feeds. It's all there. So that makes it really easy. Now, in our case, we're taking those SRT streams into our own cloud-based production tool, Unify. So this also happens to live in Epiphan Cloud, which gives us the big advantage of, we don't have to worry about physical hardware located anywhere. Jeremy, our producer, is in Jordan, and he's producing this all remotely from the other side of the world. I'm at home, you're in the office, no one's in the same room, and that has, some real advantages in terms of the global reach that we can now produce content. So within Unify, you can see here the inputs, right? There's mine, there's Adam's, there's my screen share. Those are all coming into Unify over SRT. Those are going into our different encoding channels, like our program channel here. You can see, we can monitor this all remotely. You can see the levels, you can see what we're sending out. All of this nice and easy and simple. Now I could dive deeper into the admin, but I won't for today. But the nice part here is that cloud-based production tools tied together with something like Connect, it's easy.
Yeah. And for me, it's all about peace of mind, right? As a producer, I want to be able to sleep well at night. I want to have more time to worry about the important things in prep and not the weird technical kind of minutia of how to make these things work together. So,
Right.
Yeah, it's just a game changer, basically.
And I think the big advantage also is that ultimately, I mean, obviously, Adam, you and I understand all this technology stuff. We'll do it every day. But if we had someone who didn't understand it, their level of participation is literally just joining a Teams meeting. They don't have to know what we're doing on the back end. All they're doing is clicking Join Teams Meeting button. They jump in there. Hopefully their audio and video is good. But that's all they have to do. So we can have anybody join us this way.
Yeah.
And we don't have to give them special instructions. They just show up, do their thing, and the magical producers like you and Jeremy make it all happen in the background.
Yeah, and that's more than just a technical advantage. That could mean the difference between having someone on your show and not having someone on your show.
Right.
So, yeah.
And we've run into that before. We had someone we wanted to bring in as a guest like a year and a half ago or something like that. And we're like, yeah, do you have something you can encode and send us an SRT stream because we've got to bring it in here? And they're like, what? No.
Yeah, what?
Like,
SRT? What is that?
I have a laptop with a webcam, and I can't learn about them. So, yeah. It's, this is a game changer. It improves on all those other theories while really checking all the pros from those other methods and adding some more pros and eliminating pretty much all the cons. So that's the way I see it. Yep. So we did have some people in chat, which I do have up here. Our friend Snoga was saying hello from Uganda, which we always appreciate you joining us here. You did ask a question about, do Pearls accept browser sources, or is there any plan to incorporate that? So today, Pearls do not accept browser or HTML-based sources. It's something we might look at, but it's, there's no definitive plan to do that. I will tell you, though, that Unify can do it. So cloud-based tools have advantages sometimes, like infinitely scalable power.
Yes. Yeah.
So I hope that answers that question. We did put the link to the blog in chat there, which is great. So, but I think that's where we will wrap it up today, Adam. Thank you so much for joining me. If anyone's interested in learning more about Connect, obviously check out the website, epiphan.com, and there's all the information you need there. The blog's all there. And you can also always reach out to Adam or I or other members of the team here at Epiphan if you have questions about Connect. You can jump on the website, jump on live chat. You can give us a call, send us an email. We would love to talk to you about what your needs are for producing content and bringing guests in to those productions, because everyone's trying to do it, but it's a challenge. So hopefully we can help solve those problems for you. Adam, we have a very special teaser. The next episode of this show, 2 weeks from today, December 1st. It's not only the 1st of December, that's cool, but we're going to be talking to the guys at First Mile.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't want to give too much away, but I know you're super stoked on this. So
yes. I may have had a hand in this next upcoming thing. So I may be frantically editing a video as we speak.
So please come back and tune into that show. First Mile makes cellular bonding gear, and man, what gear it is. So come back December 1st, 2 weeks from today, for Live at Epiphan. We do this every other Thursday at 3 o'clock Eastern, talking about cool tech and stuff that has to do with live streaming like Epiphan Connect. And we will see you in the next time. Be sure to like, follow, subscribe in YouTube, Facebook, wherever you happen to be watching this, and follow us, obviously, for all the upcoming news. Thank you so much for joining us. I see JC just saying in chat, great video. Thanks, everyone, for watching. And thanks, Adam. See you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.